In Afghanistan, enemy sniper teams attacked U.S. Marines and Afghan troops across the Taliban haven of Marja as several gun battles erupted Monday in the midst of a major offensive to seize the extremist southern heartland. Ray Suarez is in charge.
As the battle for Marja stretched into its third day, snipers fired on NATO forces and gun battles erupted in the streets, bogging down progress. Since Saturday, 15,000 U.S., British, and Afghan troops have been deployed here in the biggest joint operation of the war. 2 have been killed so far, 1 American and 1 Briton. Dubbed Operation Mushtarak, or Together in the Dari language, the mission is to take Marja and its surrounding villages out of insurgent control.
Tell the Taliban that they are not welcome in this area anymore.
Marja is the biggest town in Helmand province, still under Taliban rule. It's also a major way station for the heroin poppy trade that funds the insurgency. NATO publicized its plans to take the town for weeks, and many Taliban were thought to have fled in advance of the attack. But at a news conference today, Afghanistan's defense minister said fighters remained, and he urged them to put down their weapons.
I would like to give this message to our enemy. We will not leave the area. We will stay there at all costs to bring peace. So it is better for them to join us in serving their country.
The goal, though, isn't just to push the Taliban out. It's to win over the town's 80,000 residents. The plan is to establish Afghan governance and Afghan security.
Until now, there was no security. But now, after everything is fine, we want them to build us schools and roads. So far, they haven't done anything for us. Now it is time to work, and they have promised to do that.
Efforts to win over the people were complicated yesterday after 2 U.S. rockets demolished a house, killing civilians. Initial reports said 12 civilians were dead, including 6 children. Today, though, the Afghan Interior Minister said insurgents may have been among the dead.
Unfortunately, our forces didn't know that civilians were living in that house, and as a result of this incident, 9 civilians were killed, and our preliminary investigations show that 2 or 3 fighters were killed.
The top Allied commander in Afghanistan, U.S. General Stanley McChrystal, apologized for what he called this tragic loss of life, but said his troops were working to minimize civilian casualties.
The first thing I would say is when President Karzai approved the conduct of this operation, he gave us some very specific guidance. And that guidance was to continue to protect the people of Afghanistan. And so this operation has been done with that in mind.
Afghan President Hamid Karzai warned civilian deaths could jeopardize the mission. He's called for a full investigation into the accidental strike. And in a separate development, a NATO airstrike in neighboring Kandahar province killed 5 civilians. Earlier this evening, I talked with Rod Nordland of the New York Times. He's been covering the Marja story from Kabul.
What kind of resistance are the Allied forces meeting in their assault in Helmand?
Well, you know, there are wildly varying accounts. There are a bunch of foreign jihadis dug in the bazaar and willing to fight to the death, to snipers all over the city, to some accounts that have only as few as 20 Taliban left. What everyone seems to agree on, though, is that there is a huge number of booby traps, buried IEDs, mines, and so forth that are going to be very time-consuming and painstaking to remove.
In these battles that U.S. and other forces have been getting into, how would we describe the Taliban militarily? Are they well-armed? Are they well-equipped? Are they able to fight back effectively?
I don't think you can really describe them militarily. It seems like a few guys taking pot shots at them, and not terribly effectively, with some exceptions. I mean, they have in some cases shown an ability to maneuver and all. But I think what they've done best is to get out of Dodge before the Cowboys came, and that's what most of them have done. Large numbers of them. I mean, there were accounts of credible accounts that there were more than 1,000 Taliban in Marja before this started, and nobody thinks there's more than, in the low hundreds when they came in, and probably much less now.
Why was this place chosen? Why is Marja an important objective?
Well, Marja is the last place in Afghanistan, where they have a large population under their control. It's a city of 80,000 people, and a small city, but that's much larger than most places in Afghanistan. It was also very important to them financially because they had heroin factories there that converted opium into finished heroin for smuggling. So had a big effect on their finances. And it's also just symbolically important. We took it back from them last May. We took it back from them a couple of years ago, and they were able to infiltrate. And now the Americans and the Afghans want to show that their new population-centered strategy can succeed in holding Marja long enough to rebuild it and to provide real government services that'll hopefully discourage people from going back to the Taliban.
You mentioned this area has been cleared before. How does this approach differ from earlier attempts to control Helmand? How's the Obama-era approach a departure from more than 7 years of fighting under President Bush?
Well, I think the most dramatic example of that difference was when the military and General McChrystal announced yesterday that they had, in error, killed 12 civilians, that a rocket had gone astray and hit the wrong building and killed 12 innocent civilians. They were so quick to announce that, in fact, that it turns out they exaggerated, apparently, the number of civilians they killed. It turned out it was actually only 9, and there were also 3 Taliban in the house who were shooting from the house and thereby at least arguably making it a legitimate target. If you contrast that to, say, the wedding, one of several actually, that was bombed a year or two ago during the Bush administration, they just, it took them months to ever admit they had even done anything wrong.
Beforehand, had there been attempts to get civilians out of the line of fire entirely, to get them to go somewhere else outside of Marja?
No, I think the whole tactic was to warn them that they were coming and to warn the Taliban that they were coming. It gave the Taliban plenty of time to leave and to seek lodging elsewhere, but it also meant that they didn't have to have such a bloody campaign coming in to subdue it.
The U.S. military has made an effort to call attention to the Afghans who are fighting in this assault. What's the ratio of Afghans to alliance forces, and how are they doing?
Yeah, they have been repeatedly saying the Afghans are in the lead, the majority of the forces are Afghan and so forth, but the real fighting is being done by the American Marines and backed up by the Brits and the other foreign forces.
Rod Nordland, thanks a lot for talking to us.
Okay, pleasure. Bye.